again to our presenting sponsors. You can see them on the screen here. We really appreciate your commitment to the sector and your commitment to allowing us to elevate these conversations around the globe. So do check out our presenting sponsors. They would be so grateful. Julia Patrick, happy Monday to you. Yeah. CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, and I am Jarrett Ransom, CEO of the Raven Group, also known as the Nonprofit Nerd. So I'm really excited today because Julia is again in the hot seat. If you missed last Monday's show, it was amazing. And in fact, Julia, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, I always have Post-it notes right in front of me, and I was just jotting down notes from last Monday. Good. And in fact, yeah, it came up in several conversations with my client over the week, and so I've implemented a lot of your tips and tricks. So today you're going to talk to us about that modern press release, because last Monday's show, Julia, as you know, we got a lot of questions on that. So why don't you kick us off and tell us about this modern release?
So one of the things that makes me go insane, I mean, literally makes me go insane, is when I'm out and about and I'm on a panel, whether, virtual or not, out now panels, I will hear other people that will say, well, the press release is dead. And right. It's like, holy moly, it has never been more alive nor more powerful. And okay. So we mentioned that last week, and I had so many people reach out and say, wait a minute, everybody's saying the press release is dead. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So I thought that I would reframe this a little bit, because it's really more of a modern press release. And okay. The reason why is that there's several things going on in the media landscape. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, media outlets are shrinking. And when we say that, it doesn't mean that there's a lack of information. It just means there's a lack of information managers, meaning an average newspaper or radio station or broadcast, outlet, TV news outlet would have had probably 4 to 6 times the number of employees just 10 years ago.
Sure.
Just 10 years ago. And that number has been lopped off. And it used to
question, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I like to ask the questions that one, we're both curious, but why is that? Is that because the media outlets are shrinking? We're definitely seeing a diminishing of the print media. So is that why?
I'm having to fan myself, because this is something that totally gets my goat. Okay. So the reason why media outlets are shrinking is because media communications, the transference of knowledge, information, news, used to be managed by news outlets. Mm-hmm. And now we have something called social media. And so we have more internalized, localized, and community networks that are now managing their own news. And so that might be, my favorite character of all times, the neighbor Alice Kravitz on Bewitched, because she was the town gossip.
Oh yes.
We have taken that to a digital format, and so that has changed. Back in the day, we had 3 networks, and you trusted Walter Cronkite, and he came into your home at 5 o'clock. This was before my time even, but that's how we disseminated information, for good or for bad. It was highly controlled, highly edited. And now we have a lot of things going on. So that's a whole nother journalism issue. But okay. The reality, what it does is that it impacts the way our nonprofits share their message and tell their story.
Sure, absolutely. So as we tell our story and we talk about content, what the heck do we send, right? What should be our content?
So you know what? First and foremost, never do anything once. Okay, for one use. So for example, I'll give you a little thing that's like my secret weapon as a woman in my own home. I never prepare a meal that I can't get a second meal out of it, right? So if I'm cooking, I know, and I'm not a great cook, but if I'm cooking like a roast, I know that half of that roast is then going to go into burritos down the road, or it's going to go into something else, right? And that's the mentality of the press release. I know you're like, what the
Change
hell?
my meal prep also. I mean, I love it.
Oh my God. Well, I just gave away one of my womanly secrets. Thank you,
Nice.
Judy Patrick. But no, really, you have to look at this as a multi-prong effect. Otherwise, you'll be like, why the hell am I doing all this work and it's not helping me? So the reality is that whenever you're communicating something about your organization, you want it to live in other places. So first and foremost, when you have changes about your board, like you add a new member, you know, new board members, they want to get promoted themselves, and they are generally attached to large organizations who can become funders. So you want to promote who's on your board, who's been elevated, who's moving off onto an emeritus board, whatever, things of that
And
nature.
what did you call this last Monday? Something about duality?
Yeah, I mean, it's really basically the dual purpose, and it should be at minimum a dual purpose, right?
Okay.
And we'll talk about that a little bit when I share the idea about the secret sauce, which is the leadership list.
Okay.
But the reality is, it's all things that are going on, and it doesn't just have to be about your nonprofit. It should be about your sector. So, for example, let's say you're working in the cultural space, and you can report, you get information about how museum attendance is down, or museum attendance is up, but virtually, or donors are down, or, you know, whatever it is, you can send this type of information out. The trick is, it's not a novel. It's a one-page document that's easy to digest. It continues to get your name out there, and it becomes a habit.
That's great feedback. You know, I shared even last week, Julia, that I was a mass communication undergrad. And so we talked a lot. I did a lot of the press releases.
Yeah.
So talk to us now about, you know, now that we know that we need to create content for more than one purpose, what tools can we use to amplify this?
So the tools are really almost as important, if not more important, than the press release. And this is why. Because sometimes the press release gets your organization's name out in front of an assignment editor, a reporter, maybe even the publisher or the owner of the media outlet. And sometimes it sparks an idea. They might not be interested in exactly, but maybe they'll be like, wow, this would be a great lead in for another topic. Or wow, this might be a great story to add during this week of content that we're doing. I mean, think of Shark Week and how everybody gets all excited about Shark Week, and people selling yogurt and even hard candies get into Shark Week, and they're not even related to Discovery networks, right? So there's ways for you to be amplifying your brand and your message. And one of the ways that you can do that is have on hand, ready to go, what we call stock photography, B-roll, headshots, things that a news organization would use, whether they're one of the big threes, a cable news network, or even a little local neighborhood newspaper. So that's photography that would be of your campus, clients, your action, you know, yourself, your organization working, doing their work. It might be, you should always have a clear image of your logo. You should have clear and professional images of your leadership. And those files should be in JPEG format. And basically a medium to low res. Believe it or not, it's not the high res that we used to work with, because we're not doing print as much as we're doing digital. The other thing is B-roll. B-roll can be a little daunting for some, but it's what we call, and we mentioned this last week, it's evergreen. That means that you have people being filmed that aren't in t-shirts or parkas,
Right.
right? They could be like taken any day.
They're weather
week,
agnostic, right?
Oh my gosh, I love that. Weather agnostic.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah. So that it can be used. And that would be taken by a professional videographer with good equipment, wouldn't have any sound on it. And it could be then taken and edited into somebody else's
Julie, you know what I've
program.
noticed
So,
since the pandemic, of course, is this B-roll now really needs to include people wearing masks, keeping distance, right? Because I've seen here our local university, they cannot use B-roll from a year ago of students gathering in large groups, right? Like they're now using B-roll since the pandemic. And it's almost like if you do use a past image without a mask, it's you almost need to say that. I mean, is that a correct assumption?
I love that. And that is a super astute comment. And you're absolutely right. We see the same thing a lot with celebrity connectivity. We see this in the sports world where they will film like they're stars and then somebody gets
Yeah.
traded. Right. And then it's like, holy moly, that third baseman, he's no longer with the
Right.
organization. That renders that entire
Right.
thing null and
Right.
void. So yeah, you do need to be thoughtful about that. And I think you're right. Especially in this day and age, if you move quickly and you invest in
Mhm.
that, your footage is going to get
Yeah,
run.
I've just noticed that and I'm like, wow, that's great. Or I've also noticed the other where it was pre-COVID and they make that, little caveat statement. Talk to us now, Julia. Let's move into the format and what are the standards for that?
So the standard of a press release is very, very specific. It's not very sexy. It's very, very precise because these assignment editors and reporters are just getting flooded and they're going through their email and they're trying to scan.
Mhm.
So you need to start with something that we call a headline. So the headline might be Museum Celebrates 150 Years in Service.
Okay.
The deck, DECK, which is like the subhead, could be celebrates milestone with new endowment, right? I mean, it's like, so the main point and then the lead in and why you want to read. The next 3 or 4 paragraphs should be the old fashioned who, what, where, why, and then how. And that is something that even for clients that we work with and have worked with over the years, we will actually at the very end of a press release write who,
Yeah.
and then what, why, and how. I mean, we will actually then kind of recap that for the media because again, they're going so fast. And so you can make this easy to manage, truncate it, and clear. You have to remember that everything in the press release is a tease. I mean, hopefully it will engage a media outlet to then find out more about you, engage with you.
So
Same as with other people.
great topics. And question for this, on the who, the where, the how, all of that. I was always told that you have like one person that's the media representative. Right now during COVID-19, and as we've talked about a lot with our guest, and you and I have talked about this in addition, Julia, is there's been so much change in organization, change in leadership, change in point of contact. Who might that person be now, if there has been cutbacks maybe in their communications team?
Right. So it goes both ways. On every press release, one of the pieces at the very end or the bottom should be who the contacts are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically 24/7, who to contact, who to email, include your cell phone, your Twitter handle, so that somebody can get back to you. The reporter or the assignment editor can get back to you. The easiest way to do this, to manage this, and it is a heavy lift, is to create an Excel spreadsheet, very simple. You list a couple of things. The media outlet type. Is it a broadcast, digital, print, magazine? What language is it in? The name of the publication, the reporters, and then sometimes if you have a bigger group, like what are their stories? What are they interested in? Are they a sports publication or are they a high society publication? That type of thing.
That assignment editor and the topic. Okay.
But the assignment editor, the reporters, and it doesn't have to be one person. So as many names as you get, populate that.
That's great. And you had said that last week in the masterclass, which was Such a great tip, because you're right. I mean, not only is the nonprofit sector being hit with either furloughs or, what have you, but so is the media.
Yeah.
So now let's move into the distribution, because I'll tell you, Julia, again, back when I was doing press releases,
Mhm.
I sat in a corner closet and sent faxes.
Right. Yeah.
Back in the day.
I know. I did that too. No, yeah, I totally did that. And then I remember we got software where we could preload the email address or the phone numbers. And yeah, that was like, woo. But so
Yeah.
who should get your press?
Yeah, who should we send these to?
So you should be sending those to every single media outlet that you can get your hands on, that information. You need to be monitoring that to see what bounces back. Because I'm talking about sending this through email. Then you would know who's
Not
moving
faxes.
out faxes. I don't even have a fax machine hooked up in my office anymore.
No, I was at a mailbox shop last week, and this older gentleman came in and faxed something, and I thought, wow, I haven't seen that in forever,
I know, it's true. And so, and that also, if you're faxing something, it's not even going to get to the person that you want to. We're seeing more with reporters' Twitter handles being really used. And so that means your story is going directly to the reporter. Now, a couple of things are going to happen in that distribution change. That reporter is going to have to go to an assignment editor and basically be given permission to run that story or research that story or run it down, right? So there's two directions here: sending things out to the assignment editors or the show editors, and then to as many reporters as you can get your hands on. The other thing I want to talk about is something that I call the leadership list. And this is like one of the secret sauces to the whole concept of the press release. And that is, you want to create a distribution list of your employees, your major donors, your board. Because when they get those press releases, they look at it and they're like, holy moly, thank you.
Say that list again. Yes, could you please nerd out and say that list again?
I actually call it the Golden Leadership List. And I think we have a class on the American Nonprofit Academy.
Good.
So that you can, and it's free. You can take it and it'll tell you everything. So for example, let's say you are a after school program, right? You on your leadership list should be all of the principals in your area. It should be the people from your state or municipal government that deal with education. So the superintendent of education. It should be the foundations, the Boys and Girls Clubs. It should be things of that nature. People that are going to align to your information or to your mission. And it's the exact same piece, right? So they're going to get a press release and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I got a press release. As we say, hold the presses, right? It's pretty sexy because most people outside of media don't see that. But what it does is it makes your constituents and partners and stakeholders feel like they're in the know. And it's a great way to communicate. Great way to communicate.
That is brilliant. And I literally did. So I want all y'all to know, because that's me in the South. We say all y'all. I wrote it down in a Post-it so that I can share that. So
yeah, leadership list. It's like gold. I think I call it the golden leadership list.
The golden leadership list.
Yeah.
So now we've moved away from fax machines. You and I are no longer standing in the corner faxing all night while everyone else is enjoying, whatever the virtual gala is now. So these are really done through the digital and the social media platforms.
Right. And I really want to stress that the email system that we really started marching towards in the last 10 years has really morphed more into social media. So posting or connecting with actual reporters through Twitter is really immediate, super immediate. And you have to remember that we don't have that 5 o'clock Walter Cronkite, wait for the font of wisdom to tell us what went on in our country. I mean, it's 24, we always say 25/8 in media because it's more than 24/7. And so getting right to those people directly is where you want to go. And even if your information doesn't get put onto a media outlet's official feed, it goes into the feed of these reporters, right? And so in essence, it's getting shared.
And Julia, I learned something from you, which, I'm just so grateful that you and I are able to have so many offline conversations. But one of the things that you said, and it just, it just hit home for me, is that you build relationships with media for the bad press, right? So all of this is really good to like toot our horns and to share what we're doing in our community. But when something bad might happen in your community, you also want the media on your side to help shape the story in a way that's maybe not so alarming. I don't know the right words to put to that.
Right. So I have a phrase that says, you send these press releases and you work with media for the bad times, not for the good times. I can tell you right now that in my community, there's a really serious problem with a very large nonprofit, something that's going on as we speak today, Monday, the 21st of September. The media has yet to use this nonprofit's name. They have not identified it. They're telling the story about what's going on. They're tracking it down. It's real news time. But what happens is this nonprofit has a sterling reputation. And so what happens when something bad happens, and it will, you want those media relationships to say, okay, hold on, pause. I know so-and-so organization. I know so-and-so, the leader of that organization. I'm going to call them, or I might help protect them. And I know that we think that media doesn't do that, but we do that because we're human beings. I can tell you, wearing a publisher hat for 30 years, there were times when I soft-killed a story or I amplified a story because I believed in it or I believed in the people. It's human nature. It's what we do. And as community building, that's what you need to be thinking about.
So that goes back to what we've talked about a lot during the show, honestly, since the middle of the March, is that return on relationship.
Absolutely. It is, it really is, Jarrett. I mean, it is so encompassing. And I appreciate that you brought that up. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now we're going to move into really reaching the media. And, you've got a couple of things here, broadcast, print, as well as web-based. And as I'm looking at the clock and we're short, it always goes quickly. But touch on this point here, if you would.
So this is something that is really an old-fashioned way to go. And it takes a little bit of shoe leather. But if you're doing something that you can actually make a physical representation of, so for example, let's say that you have a new product or you have a new something that you're doing. Like maybe you have, I was just working on a future guest's show deck, and they have a really clever thing where they're selling t-shirts that are very expensive, but they are aligned to this whole giving concept. Well, so maybe you deliver one of these t-shirts. It costs you $5 to $10, but when you sell it, it costs $2,000. You know what I mean? And you can deliver that to a news station or a reporter. I mean, there are ways for you to go through that. I know, Jared, you tell the story with Shoebox Ministries of taking the shoebox of personal hygiene items that would be distributed to the homeless to show what the reporter what went on, and you got on the air on a morning show, right?
I did. And I had developed that relationship previously, right? And so that was so helpful to really have that return on relationship. But reaching the media is often intimidating and scary. And I know not for everyone, but for some people, it's like, oh gosh, how do we do that? So all of your tips and techniques, Julia, have just been phenomenal. And I just want to put a plug in there. There's so many amazing resources on the American Nonprofit Academy website. So do take a look there. Go back to Monday's show. I don't even know what date that was, but would that be the 14th or something?
I don't know, a week ago.
I know, it was a week ago.
Track 7.
Yeah. And it was just, filled with so many great tips, just like today's show. Julia, thank you. And for everyone, this has been recorded, and it is also up on the website with just a few hours after the show, and you can find it on your streaming as well. Julia Patrick has joined us with her expertise in this sector. So thank you, Julia, for sharing that. And it's nice to have you back. We missed you some last week.
No, I missed you guys.
I know but
I really did.
and I'm going to be missing a show coming up, but I'm Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd. We definitely want to say thanks, huge shout out and thanks to our presenting sponsors. We really appreciate all that you do. If you haven't checked out this atlas, I want you to do that. We've been sharing it now about a week, maybe a week and a half, but this resides on the American Nonprofit Academy's website, but you can also find it from its separate URL, nonprofitatlas.com, and it's a directory for nonprofits. If you're looking for someone in human resources, if you're looking for someone with media, if you're looking for someone with fundraising, coaching, and helping, you can find these experts across the nation on the Nonprofit Atlas. So do check that out. Julia, I'm going to let you finish it up from here.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah. Hey, we're really excited about our Friday Ask and Answered show. It's really cool. It's being presented by Your Part-Time Controller, which is really the largest nonprofit bookkeeping company in the country. They only work with nonprofits. So it's fascinating, the things that they do. But ask us your questions. We have really interesting, Jared, don't you think we have interesting questions?
We absolutely do. And they come from all over. And sometimes they stump us, or I'll say, Julia, I don't know about that question. Last week we had one about an organization not being faith-based, but they wanted to pray. And how do you handle that? So it's really applicable, relevant questions that we're all maybe at some point dealing with. So I just think it's a great opportunity.
It is. It's really fun. I'm always amazed. Sometimes they're afraid to give their name or tell where they're from, or identify themselves. They come at us. And so we're inviting you to do the same thing. You can email us. You can go to our website. You can tweet us. Go ahead and reach out, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yep, absolutely. Do that. Well, hey, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful way to start our week. It is Monday of a brand new week, so I wish you all the best. Please do join us tomorrow for another episode of the Nonprofit Show. And Mrs. Patrick, what do you say at every ending?
I always say, stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everybody.